Hello everybody, and welcome to our ceremonial class where our subject is the theme of initiation. Tonight we're going to begin some of the academic work related to initiation. It's a fascinating subject, and if any of you have read the book Initiation, Human and Solar, read it again and again and again. I've been reading it now for about 50 years, and I'm always surprised at the astonishing information that is within it. The reason I'm talking is that my wife has a cough. So do I. But we will begin now, and today the group has been building altars, and we discussed ceremonial work to a degree. And now we can begin this work on initiation. So this is Turia. This is Turia.
Welcome to our little ceremonial workshop. So we have been starting already in the morning and having some kind of practical work. We were talking also about the importance of the ceremonies during this time, and also what is demanded from the ceremonial worker. But then, because of the whole theme of our conference is initiation, fire from heaven, so our theme is ceremonies of the mysteries. So tomorrow we will go even deeper, and we try to go ahead today. And because I am starting to cough if I speak, so that's why Michael is going to talk. But just a few things. I just want to mention about the pictures of that there is the courtesy for Socrates' genes. Oh,
this one.
Can you go further? We have also some images from drawing a carpenter. Go further. Then I don't have Francis's image, so here is the smiling face representing our wonderful brother Francis Donald, who actually has been making the flyer of the conference. And then we have fantastic images also from Niklas Röhrig. So that is scheduled, we can skip that. So welcome. Welcome participants in this room, and also those who are there. It's lovely that you are with us. So when we think about the human history, and actually when I started to do and collect material, and you know that then you are lost into that huge amount of things. You don't know what to choose because you would like to talk about everything, but maybe just this aspect of that throughout the planet, in every continent, you find all kinds of formations by stones. And if you look about these stones, which are in this image also, you have that on the right, where are many, many layers of heavy stones. Then you have all these formations where you have those huge stones which are put in the circle. Everywhere, not only in Stonehenge, but they are found everywhere on planet. And like this, so think about how that has been done. Well, we have been reading about these ideas by Blavatsky, that during the Atlantean times, people knew already how to break through the gravitation. That could be one of the explanations of these magnificent places. Then you have this amazing and very interesting circles hammered in the stone, and they go thousands and thousands of years backwards. Then you have, that is amazing image. Hopefully you can see that in that sense at home, because when you look into the center it goes in circles, lower and lower and lower. And there are hammered those caves. So that is also when we think about these sacred ceremonies. Which
Where is that?
That is in England. I think I put keyword like, did I put sacred stones or something? Study that because it is so fascinating. It took for me several hours. I couldn't stop that. And look at that. Amazing.
China.
Yes. And there is the Buddha, which is again hammered in the middle of these amazing rocks. And is it not so when you look at these that it invokes in you this kind of a spiritual path and past what we all have been going through? We have been here and there on planet to have different kinds of ceremonies. Hopefully they were related to light. But anyway, the whole planet is full of this kind of signs, more than we have from nowadays. We have fantastic buildings, we have churches and temples, yes, but this kind of which are related to nature, where these people, because earlier people were much more sensitive about the currencies of the ethers in the land itself, so they were able to build up into the more powerful places. And there we have Stonehenge, and I think that is the last one. Anyway, I recommend you to study this more because it gives you a lot of expansion of the consciousness of that what has been going on already. So, Michael, I'm giving that to you now, and you can launch it.
Okay, dear. Thank you. Well, we have a lot of information. How many people have read Initiation Human and Solar? More than once? Okay. Yeah, okay. A few times. Okay. Fantastic book. You know, so many people are channeling the Tibetan or some other great master, and all they have to do is read that book, and then they'll know what channeling really is. And then they will stop and wait for someone who knows what they're doing. What I'm going to do is, you'll see the words, and I'm going to kind of improvise on them a little bit, read and improvise. We know about the coming of the Lords of the Flame, who are the great solar angels, coming from the heart of the sun, coming through the planet Venus, coming through the Venus chain and globe of the Earth scheme, and then down into our own chain of 7 or 10 globes to the globe number 2. It's always connected with Venus, and finally to globe number 4. So this, the sacrifice of these solar angels make it possible for us to become conscious human beings. We enter the 5th kingdom of nature. As Blavatsky said, we're kind of like artificial hothouse plants undergoing a special type of cultivation. We haven't had to bring ourselves along entirely. We've had a great assistance, and of course that has been because we're so far behind. The problem was on the moon chain, okay? But anyway, we have this tremendous support from these inner beings, and so many of our ceremonies are about that. They're about accessing the fire which they are. They are lords of the flame. They are fire. They are the serpent fire. And we have to learn how to access what they are so we can express that in our everyday life. We become a conscious ego, as it says, and we enter into the feeling that we are the higher self instead of this instrument with which we usually identify ourselves. You know, you look in the mirror, what you see is what you get, but it's not true. It is an instrument which is said to be used by the solar angels and which has to be refined. So at the 3rd initiation, we finally get the ability to actually focus our consciousness right within that causal body. And DK says the reason that so many of us are not successful at meditation is because we cannot focus our consciousness within the causal body, within our own higher self. In other words, I just say, take your place within the field of virtue that you have accumulated. You know, this is an easy way of saying how do you focus within the causal body. So let's just say that they are raising us much more rapidly than otherwise might be the case. You know, basically, DK said something, if not for the intervention of the solar angels, we would be less advanced now than even the least advanced of human beings on our planet. So they're saving us millions of years, really. And it's a good thing, too, you know, because a lot of difficult things happened in an earlier part of our chain. So they, and some of them, even, you know, they call the huge tabernacles of clay. Let's say these, you know, Lemurian man, 60, 70, 80 feet tall. They took incarnation within those forms. What a sacrifice that is. There they are, a very, very refined intelligence, and they take incarnation in that racial type in order to advance the whole situation of humanity. See, initiation is all about advancement. It's all about widening, deepening, going farther and farther into the possibilities of what we can be. And finally, you know, that's why DK wrote that book first. He knew who we are. He knew we'd be interested in it. He knew that if you offer the incentive of a wider growth, a deeper growth, people are going to bite at that and they'll really go for it. So he was very smart about that. So these are just general things. We learn how to focus our attention within the causal body at the third initiation. By the time we are at the fifth initiation, we learn how to really unite with our spirit, our monad. But it happens in the beginning at the third initiation, and some of us are striving towards realizing what spirit is. Not only the soul of love, but the spirit of identification, oneness, sameness, all that has more to do with what is called isolated unity. Isolated unity, which is really the achievement of the master of the fifth degree. So the Lord of the world, the silent watcher, the solitary watcher, the great sacrifice, he, from the third initiation, fourth and fifth, makes it possible for us to enter these still higher states. But remember, as we were discussing this morning, the initiate is initiated before initiate is initiate before he is initiated. Okay, that's a very important thing to realize, meaning the responsibility is yours to raise yourself to the level of the next initiation and then have it confirmed by the Lord of the world or by the Christ, depending on what initiation it is, and then with additional things added to it. So, you know, there's no way to give that responsibility over to anyone else. This is your responsibility. So eventually, as we go along, man becomes one with the Logos through the instrumentality of the one about whom naught may be said. And what is that? That's like a cosmic Logos who uses 7 major suns for chakras, or a supercosmic Logos who uses 7 major constellations for chakras. Now, what kind of being is it that uses galaxies for chakras? You know, so it goes on and on and on. And even though we, there have been, countless universes, according to the secret doctrine, it's been the great breath, breathing universes in and breathing them out. These universes have an immense duration, trillions upon trillions of years, and we are on our way. No matter how we may feel about being a tiny little human being, which we are, we're on our way. Okay. Okay, general words by DK. Okay. Right. So, now, there are initiations within initiations within initiations. We think, oh, we human beings are being initiated. But we have to remember that the planetary Logos is passing through an initiation, and that the solar Logos is passing through an initiation, focusing right on our planet, and who knows what's going on beyond that. So, and our planetary Logos is passing through something called the crucifixion initiation right here on our little planet. So that means why it's tough for us. We said, oh, it's just tough for me because it's tough for me. But we don't look at the wider context in which our own growth is occurring. So no true disciple is exempt from this. We're all going to suffer along. DK said something like it's the will of the planetary logos to observe, and it's your fate to suffer. Something like that, you know, just something cheerful like that. The little units, they suffer along. Okay. So anyway, big changes happen in our life, and we can talk about this till we're blue. These are, you know, words are words, but the experience is another thing. And that's what we want to have, is the experience of these deeper states. And that's one of the marvelous things about ceremony, because it really does, you know, when you're there, it's not just talk. Something happens. The energy flows, the geometry works, and people are elevated. Okay.
Yes, one point about this the initiation is that even in hierarchy, when the initiation is taking place, all of those participants are also participating in that initiation process. So the whole group is advancing forward. So it's like that they're gaining more and more power all the time. And in Buddhism, there are lovely stories about the assembly of Buddhas who are sitting there and they are discussing. And they are discussing about how to gain those spiritual powers. So it is a scientific work to implement those powers, all of those formations which is taking place. It is also that in the every single initiation there's going to be a different geometrical form which the masters are forming around
very interesting.
to be initiated. And it is because it is performed differently every time. So that is also a protection of that initiation. So I didn't exactly understand is that even though it is the same degree initiation of different initiates, so is it going to be the formation?
Well, certain things are the same, but some of the, we'll get into it later, some of the sponsors, those who back you up, you know, it might be according to your ray, it might be your master according to your ray, who stands in the different geometrical positions in order to support you in this circulation of energy.
And we have to understand this because now when we talk about the fire from heaven, so these are really the fires what has to be tamed. They cannot be just taken like a snap of the fingers, because it will kill the lower lives if that is let through.
It's all regulation. It all has to be controlled. If you're a magician, let's just say, you know, and every one of us will one day become a white magician, control, spiritual control is the main thing. You're not just sort of like spontaneously enacting something. All of this is under due law, regulation, and rules. So we have to learn the rules. We really do. And DK is very good at that because he gives us a lot of rules to learn. You know, the 14 advanced rules, the 14 rules for disciples. Then he gives us the rules for white magic. And then he gives us the laws of the soul. Rules and laws. It's Saturn. And if we don't conform to Saturn, we're going to be in trouble because Saturn is the bridge into the higher worlds. We have to have that. So anyway, you know, different chakras in our system are activated at different times. And when we're passing on the path of probation or purification, which is in a way the antechamber to the path of initiation, then we have to deal with the lower chakras, and we're dealing with what's called character building and purification. And even if we pass through that stage, we don't give that up. Because it's so, you know, it's like people saying, oh, I passed through that, I don't have to worry about that. And then they do the most outrageous things, you see. So we have to continue that while we're going. And then, so the aspirant is the one who is aspiring towards a higher life. He's upon the probationary path. But then comes what we call the disciple, and that's what we want to be. The old idea of a disciple was the learning one, the learning boy. You know, in those days it was mostly boys, but anyway, the learning boy. And when the disciple is in a position where he can pass through the first three initiations, then the inflowing energies work through the heart and the throat and the ajna center above the diaphragm. The diaphragm is the dividing line between the lower worlds and the higher worlds. And it's really interesting that the first two initiations are involved with subdiaphragmatic centers. If you deal with the first initiation, you've got the sacral center, the sex center transferring it to the throat. And the second initiation is the solar plexus center below the diaphragm, transmitting it to the heart. And then after that, you start to deal but with the higher centers. But suppose you're taking the fifth initiation. You say, well, it must be very, very high. You know, of course, the major center involved is the base of the spine center. And that's what gives us the great center of will. Just like this is the center of purpose, will and purpose at the fifth degree. Okay. So then we have the higher centers, and when the highest head center and the lowest spinal center are simultaneously involved, the disciple, who is now an initiate, really, is able to take the higher major initiations. But we all know you don't play with fire. You don't play with fire because you can set yourself back lives and lives. If you burn up the mechanism, then you have to spend the next number of lives rebuilding it. So the wisest thing is to be cautious, and in the matter of initiation, make haste slowly. Yeah, okay, even though you want to run in, you know, but the old saying, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. No, so let's keep that strongly. All right, we take the higher major initiations. So he said, a lot has been given to you, and may you use it. All right. The public is interested in this, and that's why he wrote that first book for the public. But I want to tell you, 1922 it was written. It's got information in there. You know, you're reading the advanced books. What's going on here? You've got to go all the way back to Initiation, Human and Solar to get the piece of information you need for the advanced books. So he's very smart. You know, DK is somehow got this spherical study. It's not like you have to keep on returning upon things to get the real point of view. So the old mysteries will be restored. They will be restored in the church. The nucleus is already forming. They will be restored in Masonry. They will be restored in the banded esoteric organisms. This is where initiation will occur. And he calls it the Masonic organism, the church organism, and the banded esoteric organisms. And basically, they're Ray 1, 2, and 3. Masonry 1, Church 2, banded esoteric organisms, Ray 3, paying most attention to the monads that are involved in those enterprises. So Christ himself will emerge and will give these initiations in the church, in the new church, in the new universal world religion. You know, a long way from this kind of, you know, just crazy, barbaric, personality-centered religions we have now, which are under a Martian lunar deity called Jehovah. That Jehovah is not, you know, Almighty God. You know, Jehovah is what Madame Blavatsky says is a lunar deity. You know, and people worship that being, and they get the religion that they deserve for doing it. So the Masons will come out, and the first initiation will be publicly admitted to the lodge by one of its members, authorized to do so. It's all under supervision. Look, we're heading into great times. All we have to do is get through the next century, you know, something like that, or even the next 9 years, you might say, period of the forerunner. Because, you know, in 2025, they say now we're going to really make plans for the externalization of the hierarchy, and plans will be laid for the reappearance of the Christ. Is not going to happen overnight, because a lot of things have to take place first. In all these 5 major centers, the masters have to be working, surrounded by their disciples, and the people in those countries have to look to them for good advice. Now, this is a long way, you know, it's not politics in the U.S. right now, is it?
So
Okay.
also about this, the first initiation, which is going to be given publicly, is that the Christ himself also will give them.
Right. He will be the Hierophant. Christ is Neptune. Okay, that's one way to look at him. He gives the first 2 initiations, and they will be done publicly. With regard to the Lord of the world, he is Uranus, he is electric fire, and that is not a public display. Okay, all right. So, what do we mean? We're speaking of initiation, of wisdom, of knowledge, probationary path. But what, dear?
You can skip those 2. There are so many slides.
Okay. Well, it's also interesting. That's the problem. Anyway, it's such a big subject, you know. We think we know something about it, and people get all, you know, high and somehow very present in their own point of view. They think they're something. But a little perspective shows you what a gnat we really are. You know, we're just the tiniest little thing. And then when we begin to realize who we really are, you almost become teachable. You know, at that point, you might actually learn something. When this big fat ego that sits in the center of your field of consciousness begins to shrink down into becoming almost just like a point and then starts to disappear, then you become teachable, and not before. All right. Interesting, conclusive, whatever. So, the word initiation, it comes from two words, in and into, and ire, to go into, to enter a new field. We're always interested in the new. Is there anything new? Well, you know, from the absolute philosophical perspective, there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing new. But from the point of view of how we operate in our particular universe, it always seems new. So that's good enough. So it's the making of a beginning, the entrance into something. It posits in the widest sense an entrance into spiritual life and into a fresh stage in that life. We always want, you know, I was saying we began this we began this class with the moon in late Pisces. Okay. But it's not exactly like the new, you know. Tomorrow is the new. Aries comes into it, you know. And it gives you a breath of fresh air. It exhilarates you. You become inspired. You become ready to face life with joy, you know. So hopefully, joyful day tomorrow. Okay. So it's the first step upon the path of holiness. What is the path of holiness? The path of becoming whole. Holism, the path of realizing you're not just this tiny individual thing, you are that which pervades all these tiny individual things. You are the substratum of it all. And that of course, it takes a while to get beyond just saying it, to actually realizing it is true. We're interested in our personality. Where do I stand? Who am I? You know, it's as if your identity could be invested entirely in this little ring past knot we call a personality or even a soul. No, your identity is much bigger, and initiation reveals that to us. So the man who has taken the first initiation is one who has taken his first steps into the spiritual kingdom. That happens pretty much, well, some of you have studied Alice Bailey, but you're entering the kingdom of souls, and basically the fifth petal of your egoic lotus is totally unfolded by that time. And, you know, you're basically, technically speaking, you are a disciple, but at least you're a probationary initiate by that time. And a lot of people are going to be able to go through that if they care enough to do it. Like, it's no cakewalk, okay? All right, so we are entering this stage into out of the human kingdom into the fifth kingdom of nature, the superhuman kingdom. So it's a progression through kingdoms. We were animal man, okay? We were animal man. We were in the third kingdom. Then we entered the individualizing fourth kingdom. Now, a certain number of people in the world, not all, but enough to raise the whole mass, will be entering the fifth kingdom of nature, the kingdom of souls, the kingdom ruled by Venus and not by Mars. See, you know, Venus has got to win here, you know. There's a big battle going on now between Venus and Mars, and Earth is in the middle, you know. As a matter of fact, the symbols will show you this. The symbol of Mars is the circle with the cross, is the circle with the cross above it. Earth is the circle with the cross in it, and Venus is the circle above the cross. See, that shows you the progression. Venus has to win. And right now the battle is on. The ancient Martian monads are here with us, and they're determined as the recurrent sons of war to make Mars win. It cannot be allowed.
Yes, we will study a little bit, hopefully you are going to that section where he talks about the planets and initiation. And it is very interesting to see which planets has this program of initiation, because not all have. And how important the Venus is in whole solar system. Yep. So that's why I remind you, where is your Venus in your chart?
Exactly. It's not
Because-
just men and women, you know, it's more, much more, much more.
Yes, much more. And it is very deep occult studies to look your Venus on your chart, because it reveals a lot of
Yeah.
your pattern, your path, how you are going to go through.
It's the way your solar angel influences your particular life. The solar angel's influence comes through that Venus position very strongly. Well, we'll deal with some of that in the astrology of initiation when we get there. So anyway, you're on your way to the life of the soul, you're on your way to the life of the spirit, you're on your way to being something called spiritual. Because, you know, for many millions of years, we have just been personal. We've been building up our physical nature, okay, build up our emotional nature, we begin to learn how to think, but it's just right there in the realm of personality. It's not in the realm of soul yet. And only those who really, really care and will make the effort will cross that bridge into the fifth kingdom of nature. The rest will have to wait and just slowly rise with everybody else, which will be fine. You know, everybody will get there eventually. But if you have in you the spirit or the gumption or the aspiration to sacrifice for the sake of the next kingdom, then you'll get there faster and be more useful and be more useful.
Yes, about that, because it is really so, what is said, that the one is self-initiated, and there are a group of people on the planet at the moment who are willing to take the pressure of initiation. So we have to understand actually that we, as souls, we were as incarnated souls somewhere there in the past, we made the commitment. And that speeded process is going to affect the whole humanity, because not all are on that way of pressured way. Not all are on that way of self-initiated process. So it is very good to remind oneself, whenever you have pressures, that actually let us not try to complain too much about them, because it is actually how we as souls, we decided how we are going to be initiated. That is just a fact of life.
Okay, so the number 5, maybe move this way a little here. The number 5 is really important. We're entering the fifth kingdom of nature, and Venus is that planet that has a soul of the fifth ray. We're learning how to deal with the fifth ray in the higher sense, which is lifting us into the higher mind beyond the strictly concrete mind that we have learned to use over many millions of years. Now, you know, and it's kind of interesting, you know, where are you? Are you wandering around in the hall of ignorance? Well, if you don't know anything about the soul, you're wandering in the hall of ignorance. If you begin to learn something about the soul or the higher self or the higher power, then you're in the hall of learning. And the third phase would be to enter into the university or the hall of wisdom, and that's where the initiation process starts. Now, you know, my impression is that a lot of people who come to these conferences who work in the esoteric schools like the Arcane School, the Moria Federation, School of Esoteric Studies, they are beginning to enter the university phase. Not yet graduate school, okay, but they're beginning to enter this phase where the real wisdom of the ages comes to them because they can begin to be initiated. They are probationary initiates of the first and second degree. I think that's where a lot of us are standing these days, and we could learn. Most of us are between the first and second degree. It could take 30 lives to make it, although DK does give us encouragement, and he says, in the next life or maybe the one after. So, you know, it depends on which references you read. But elsewhere, he says it's a long time between the first and the second initiation, and then things go fast. Okay, most of his students, DK's students, were pushing the second initiation. Maybe not in that life, but maybe in the next life or the next life to come, that kind of thing. And that's very close, very close. Okay. So he says, having groped his way blindly through the hall of ignorance during many ages, and having gone to the school in the hall of learning, he is now entering the university or the hall of wisdom. That should be the objective of all of us. And that's when the sacrifice petals begin to open. See, there's no progress without sacrifice. This is the very first law of the soul, the law of sacrifice, to make sacred. And of course, we don't like that. You know, it sounds like you're going to lose something. But, you know, like I said this morning, whatever I said, Master Moria, when have you ever become less through sacrifice? It really impressed me when I read that. I said, whoa, it's just really. Okay. So anyway, when he has passed through the school, he will graduate with his degree, I like the academic emphasis, as a Master of Compassion. That should be a nice, what do you say, academic degree? A Master of Compassion. Okay, maybe not for everybody. All right, so where are we here? Okay, tell me where we are. I skipped backwards?
No, forward.
Forward. Okay. Glibly we speak. Oh, here we are. Master of Compassion is. Yeah. Okay. Ceremonies of the Mysteries. Okay. So, the initiation, the process of undergoing an expansion of consciousness. Now, I'm sure we all have those moments when we realize, wait, I suddenly feel more, touch more, sense more, am wider than I was before. And it may surprise you when it happens. But, you know, it's not always the same circle, rotary motion. You actually start spiral, cyclic motion. That's the great second-rate type of motion. When you add the rotary motion of the third ray to the straight motion of the first ray, put those two together, you get spiral cyclic of the second ray, you see. So it's part of the evolutionary process, but now is a special forcing process for those who wish to do so. It's a commitment. You know, it's a question of your spiritual will. Will you do this, or will you just, how does he say, drift along, meandering feebly through life? Something like, he just makes you feel awful. The way he says how most people just kind of drift, you know. I'll get the exact quote for you. It's really delicious quote. Okay. Okay, so anyway, right, a certain range of new knowledge can come in, and that's what we're after. Not so we can say, oh, I have knowledge, I have knowledge, I have knowledge. Look, already you have all knowledge in the universe as the being you are, which we've forgotten, of course. Okay. So it's not like you have to have all this knowledge for yourself. It's a question of making the universe into the work of art it's supposed to be, to make it really beautiful and to make the drama work out, to make the dance work out, make everything work out beautifully. That's what's supposed to happen. Okay. So it is in the nature of that experience when a pupil in a school realizes suddenly that he has mastered a lesson, okay, and that the rationale of a subject and the method of procedure and are his to use intelligently. It's a science, the science of initiation. It's not just vague hope that somehow it'll happen. So these moments of, there's your intellect, intelligent apprehension follow the evolving monad through its long pilgrimage, and you wake up to the fact that you actually know something, and that's a great thrill. It's very Mercurian, the light flashes forth, and you see more than you saw before. And we're, you know, DK says most of us are in a darkened room. We're in a darkened chamber. It was just personality consciousness, that's all it is. And then he says, well, there's a little window, why don't you try to, you know, get the mist off of that window just a little bit. You might even try walking out the front door, you know. So that's what we have to learn how to do, to get out of that darkened chamber of the personality consciousness. Okay. Okay. Always the hierarchy endeavors to bring the race to the point where its units will have some idea of the next step to be taken. Do you know your next step? Does any one of us know our next step, our true next step? Not just wishful thinking. You know, I'd like to do this or that. What really is this, many of you, for many of you, it's a small lesson, and most of you are finding it a hard lesson. And then there's Master Moria saying the smallest grain of sand can stop the largest wheel. Okay, so there's some little thing that we're just overlooking or ignoring, or it doesn't mean much, and it's stopping the whole progress. So you have to get very specific about what's in your way. And that's why we're dealing increasingly now with the glamour work. We're going to do some work there on the glamour, because often it's a little thing, oh, that's just the way I am. I'm sorry, that's just the way I am. Well, anybody that tells you that's just the way I am is already really defending a glamour, okay? Especially, you know, when they could be better. But yeah, go ahead.
Here's one point about this, because humanity is nearing the first initiation. So all of these how we are coming to the point. The whole humanity is coming now to the point of the common vision. You see that everywhere when we have the threat of terrorism, we have challenges of the weather, diseases, food, water. All of these are now calling the intelligence of the humanity to solve these problems together. And there we can see how also the circumstances for the whole humanity is now forcing to humanity to come one unit. Those who want, then there will rise also those forces, which has to be also because the light is growing.
You know, DK uses somehow the school image. After all, he is a second-ray master, and you know the Tibetan schools, they're marvelous. They what an education, you know. You think you get an education in the West, but there you get the profound inner education. So he says it's like each initiation is like passing of the pupil in the hall of wisdom. You're already there. You know, if you're taking initiation, you're in the hall of wisdom, into a higher class. And it marks the clearer shining forth of the inner fire. The clearer, you know, the jewel in the lotus is finally what has to just blaze away. But the inner shining forth of the inner fire from one point of polarization to another, rising up the chakra system, and it entails the realization of an increasing unity. That's why the only way you can get through the door of initiation is to hold your brother's hand. You say, well, there's too many of us, we can't get through. But then that's the paradox. Then you can get through. So increasing unity with all that lives, not just people, and the essential oneness of the self with all selves. Words easily spoken. But if you really think about that essential oneness of the self with all selves, you really have to work on it. It's a subtle kind of perception. You have to find a way to get rid of all those things which make your identity into a narrow little thing separated from other people and beings. You have to learn how to lift the veils away from that isolation. One of the things we'll be emphasizing is that he says there's only one great heresy, the heresy of separateness. He says that's the one great mistaken thought. You know how in the Christian era you were always being burnt at the stake or whatever for various heresies, wrong thought. DK says there's only one wrong thought, the heresy of separateness. So on the path of initiation we overcome dynamically the heresy of separateness. By the time we reach the third degree, a major blow has been struck. By the time we reach the fifth, we're dwelling in isolated unity and we really have overcome. So the horizon is continuously enlarging. It includes the various spheres of creation, the different planets, the different solar systems. I'm remembering Master Morya saying in his little book of daring, I don't know if any of you have read Agni Yoga, but in the Agni Yoga book, he says, and then the least of these, in a gesture of daring, saluted the great stars and said, "Hail, brothers." And in that salutation of daring, his ego vanished. Amazing. Amazing thought. Hail, brothers. The stars, my brothers. The galaxies, my brothers. It's all one being, right? So how do we realize that? Hail, brothers. It's just at different levels along the emanative chain. That's all. Okay. So anyway, our scope is constantly enlarging. We have an increased idea of God's plan, our planetary logos, let's say. Our planetary logos is plan for the world, for his planetary scheme. We can enter into those plans and we can help them take place. Now, somebody, am I happy? Am I content? Am I living the life I want to live? Well, those are legitimate questions, but am I living the life that the planetary logos finds useful if I live it? That's another kind of question, see. In whose service are we? Are we in the service of the hierarchy, or are we in our own service? So, less and less selfishness as we go along, obviously, okay?
And that is the very interesting question of the self, because every single self belongs to the plan. And that is one of the most guarded part of the initiation. When the revelation comes to an initiate, that you see yourself in the plan, and you are not allowed to reveal it. It is looked so sacred and so, what we would be saying, so that you cannot bring it into the lower world. Like in old times, you couldn't mention even the name of God because of the sacredness. It's the same idea that all of us, and you know, that is one of the important meditation contemplations whenever we are hit with the wave of frustration or depression, that we should go into that one thought that we all belong, me too, belong to the plan of God. That nobody can be taken away. There's a beautiful saying, Chinese saying, in the universe there is not one single voice which is too much. How do you say?
That's one single
voice which is too much.
Okay, interesting.
And it tells about that every single sound or voice belongs to be here, because it is about this one voice.
He calls it the great note of nature. And he says it sounds on the note Fa, or the note F, you know. And he says no human being can stand to hear it. Otherwise all their vehicles would be shattered. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, so occultism is a lot about sound. It's a lot about light, you know. It's a lot about these great abstractions that right now are condensed before our eyes. This is condensed light. This is condensed sound. See, we're going to get to the point where we can actually wield these things and become truly creative. But we have to, you know, we have to pass the tests to prove that we will not selfishly use the powers that will be conferred, you see. So anyway, he goes on with the academic thing. He says, initiation is the effort in the abstract mind to pass an examination. Now remember, where is your initiation taking place? It's not taking place in the physical body, not in the emotional body, not in the mental body. It's taking place in the realm of the abstract mind on the higher mental plane. So that's examination that we have to pass. And when we begin to think in bigger ways, we're already entering the abstract mind. Start to think about the planet instead of just yourself, and you're already entering the abstract mind, you see. So, okay, it is, now I love the way he puts it, it is the honor class in the master's school, and is within the attainment of those souls whose karma permits and whose efforts suffice to fulfill the aim. So, you know, if you owe something, you got to pay it. That's the karma, okay? But if your effort is sufficient, then you can enter into the regime of initiation. So the idea is pay off your karma fast, you know, so you can enter. In the new schools, when people's lives are clairvoyantly examined, you can't get into the school if you're owing a lot, you know, if your karma is very heavy. You've got to take care of that first, and then you can enter. So if that's Saturn again, that's the law. You just, you know, my old teacher used to say, God is not mocked. You see, in other words, you think you are getting away with something. You are not getting away with anything. God is not mocked. And we just have to learn that about our lives. There's no doing things against the law. He used to say, no one breaks the law breaks them. I learned well at that time. Didn't even know what I was learning, but I learned something. He was very first rate. He had Leo rising with 6 planets in Pisces. So he was really something. Anyway, where are we? Okay, so now, each initiation, the passing of people, etc., etc., etc. Initiation leads to the mount, where the vision can be had. What does DK say? How much of the mountain of vision have you climbed for yourself? I mean, it's great. You read books. You know, we stand on the shoulders of giants and all that kind of thing, like Newton, you know. And that's true, but sometimes we can climb the mount of vision for ourselves too. And that's where the honor is. That's where the worthiness is, to climb. Okay, it leads to the place where vision can be had, a vision of the eternal now. Words easily spoken. You know, there's this marvelous, I think we'll use that, but there's this marvelous statement, let the holy ones whose pupils we aspire to become show us, give us the aid we seek, show us the strength of their compassion and their wisdom. There is a peace which passeth understanding. It abides in the hearts of those who live in the eternal. There is a peace which passeth understanding. It abides in the hearts of those who live in the eternal. There is a power which maketh all things new. It lives and moves in those who know the self as one. Let that peace brood over us, that power uplift us, until we stand where the one initiator is invoked, until we see a star shine forth. So I just say to everybody, it's very simple. Live in the eternal and know the self as one. That's all. You're there. Live in the eternal and know the self as one. That will guarantee you take the third initiation. Okay? Anyway, nice to have a few little thoughts in mind as we struggle along life after life. Okay, a vision of the eternal now, wherein past, present, and future exist as one. So you overcome this sequence thing. In other words, you're moving from Saturn to Uranus. Saturn is the planet of sequence. Uranus is the planet of simultaneity, all at once. So, you know, Master Moria said, the whole of Armageddon is a battle between Saturn and Uranus. See? I mean, he looked at it in a very high sense, not like, you know, someplace in Syria we're going to fight it out, which we may, okay. But anyway, you know, the kind of consciousness which gives you a simultaneous perception of the past, present, and future. Okay, a vision of the pageant of the races with the golden thread of pedigree carried through the many types, all the races and sub-races, and we've been there. Look, there's no one here that hasn't been around for millions of years on this planet. Even if you came from the moon chain, you entered in early Atlantean times. That was 12 million years ago. So maybe some of us were individualized on Lemuria, maybe, but maybe some of us came from the moon chain. 12 million years, that's a long time. That's a lot of lives, isn't it? So, you know, we make haste slowly, or really slowly, okay. A vision of the golden sphere that holds in unison all the many evolutions of our system, deva, human, animal, vegetable, mineral, elemental. It's like in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna showed Arjuna the vision of the one form of God. You see, and all these things were included within it. We have to overcome the separativeness of our consciousness. Oh, that's there, that's there, that's there. It's all one fluid interrelationship. We have to learn what that is. Through the pulsating life can be clearly seen the beating in regular rhythm. Nice seventh ray issue, the great heartbeat of all the creation of our planet and beyond, but our planet's enough for the moment. A vision of the logoic thought form on the archetypal plane, maybe our planetary logos, maybe the solar logos. A vision that grows from initiation to initiation until it embraces all the solar system. And that's just the beginning. That's the seventh initiation, maybe, you know, like the Christ has, it embraces all the solar system. Then you become eventually a planetary logos, and like Sanat Kumara, you can, you know, really participate in the group work we call making a solar system. So you know, I'm just amazed when people say, our religion is the last, and the final revelation was given by X, Y, or Z. The final revelation. Such nonsense. But they'll kill you for it if you deny that it may not, you know, say it's not true. Okay, it's the concreteness of man that works against initiation. They don't believe in the ever-expanding possibilities. We are people who believe in the ever-expanding possibilities, and we sequentially, gradually, and intelligently work towards those ever-expanding possibilities. Okay, embracing the whole solar system. Okay. So, there's a lot to assimilate here, of course, you know, a lot. Do you have any questions up to this point? In 15 minutes, we have a break.
Okay.
A break. Not that I want to break, but we do.
Go now to the planets and those things, and then we could go through the initiations.
Well, take it.
Just go.
That's a long way, the planets, and we're going to deal with that in the astrology, dear.
But there is something interesting said about them.
Look. All this. Look. You want me to skip all this? This is a long way.
No, you can talk about that.
I'm a very sequential type of person.
Gosh.
I have in my chart Saturn and Uranus together. So I'm allowed to be sequential and simultaneous at the same time. Okay. You like that? Okay, how far? I mean, all right, it's all important. All right.
Yes.
The place of initiation. The ceremony of initiation takes place on the three higher subplanes of the mental plane. Probably, you know, it's somewhat like first initiation, third subplane, second, and, well, you know, to tell you the truth, though, it's not, you don't really go beyond the second subplane of the mental plane until you have the crucifixion and the great renunciation, and the causal body is destroyed. Because that second subplane is where a lot of it happens. Now, maybe something else happens on the third and highest subplanes as you enter the triad, possibly. Okay. The five-pointed star, which is the symbol of our planetary logos, also the symbol of Venus, also the symbol of the higher kingdom and of the Makara, it at the initiations on the mental plane, flashes out above the head of the initiate. You do not see Sanat Kumara face to face. You couldn't live, you know, you couldn't survive it. Where at the third initiation, you see a star. At the fourth initiation, you see an eye beholding you. And at the fifth initiation, you see Sanat Kumara face to face. By that time, you can take it. And then, of course, beyond that, are other initiators. Sanat Kumara is no longer the initiator after the fifth initiation, an unknown being for the sixth, and the whole planetary logos himself for the seventh initiation. So anyway, the five-pointed star flashes forth. The first initiations are undergone in the causal vehicle. It has been said that the first two initiations take place upon the astral plane. This is incorrect. Okay? It's an old theosophical idea, and the statement has given rise to misunderstanding. They are felt profoundly in connection with the astral and physical bodies and the lower mental and affect the control, but the chief effect being felt in those bodies, the initiate may interpret them as having taken place there, but they don't. The vividness of the effect and the stimulation of the first two initiations work out largely in the astral body, but it's all taking place in the cave, the chamber of initiation, the causal body itself. You know, your Temple of Solomon, your egoic lotus, that's where the initiation is taking place. Now, how they work that all out and how they assemble, and, you know, it's just beyond us to know. We just have to take DK's words that these personages come together in order to conduct the energy, and our causal body is involved. How many pages do we skip, dear?
No, you can go further.
Further? I mean back?
No,
or?
I mean, you can just go.
Okay. The major initiations, because there are little lesser initiations even before you take the birth of the Christ in the heart, but the major initiations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes he says 3, 4, 5 are major, but sometimes he says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are major. They take place in the causal body, or dissociated from that body on the Buddhic plane or Atmic plane, 4th degree, 5th degree. So when your causal body is broken, you know, you're liberated into the spiritual triad. At the final two initiations, which set a man free from the three worlds and enable him to function in the body of vitality of the Logos, what is that? What is the body of vitality of the Logos? What is that? It's not hard. It's just one of those questions. The body of vitality of the Logos is?
What is the body of the vitality of man?
Yeah, what is the body of the vitality of man? It's what? It's our etheric body with its pranas and all that.
Yeah.
So the Logos has that too. Buddhic, Atmic, Monadic, Logoic plane are the four planes of vitality for our Logos. Okay, so it all takes place on the cosmic ethers. We should probably have a map there, but you probably know something about it. So it takes place in the body of vitality of the Logos. He can function there at the final initiations and wield that force. The initiate becomes the five-pointed star, and it descends upon him, merges in him, and is seen at its very center. Beautiful things, and these probably happen psychically to us as we go through. But of course, this is the big picture. This is the vista of what lies ahead, and probably we just have to learn how to control our astral body, like very next step right here. We have to learn how to get rid of kama manas and actually be able to be free of that mess, that glamorous mess. Okay, this descent is brought about by the action of the initiator wielding the rod of power, of which we are told there are four. Four rods of power. Two of them don't concern us at all, because they are cosmic rods, and they initiate solar logoi, and then there's the sevenfold flaming fire, which initiates planetary logoi, and then we have the two that concern us, the flaming diamond from beyond the third initiation, and then the rod of the bodhisattva. And each one it has a serpent connected with it, or intertwining serpents to symbolize the energy. It's just all beautifully worked out on the inner planes. It's just amazing what goes on there, and we're just lifting the veil a little bit, the ABCs, emerging out of the animal man stage, into the real human stage achieved at the third degree. Okay, so anyway, the two initiations called the sixth and seventh, this is way beyond us, take place on the Buddhic and Atmic planes, and the five-pointed star blazes forth from within itself, as the esoteric phrase has it, and becomes the seven-pointed star, and it descends upon man, and he enters within the flame. So he becomes the flame itself, which is the essence of the monad. But all of that, it's marvelous, it's beautiful, and it's so far ahead. Think of it, Christ would move very fast, right? So maybe in the year 3000 BC, he took the fourth initiation. That was 5,000 years ago. Now, because he moves so fast, he is taking the seventh initiation, and it's not even done yet. He has to go through the whole Aquarian age to finish the seventh initiation, and so does the Buddha. So how it goes is everything takes a long time until you reach initiation 2. Then it goes very fast, 2, 3, 4, and then they start to widen out again and take a long time. It's like an hourglass figure, you see. So many of us are just at that stage where if we really applied ourselves, we could make some real progress in those initiations 2, 3, 4. Most people who are interested in this kind of stuff are taking the first initiation or have taken it. See, that's the birth of the Christ. The higher power comes in, take the first initiation, and then, really apply ourselves, and then become useful, and then widen out into a much greater usefulness to the whole planetary logos. So this stuff is beyond us, but it's fascinating, interesting, and maybe... Any questions? It's all amazing stuff, It's just... I'm going backwards here.
Yes, it is.
I'm a cancer of the crab. They move backwards. The flaming diamond, the sevenfold flaming fire. Well, here's what it is. The cosmic rod of initiation, unnamed. The sevenfold flaming fire, that's the solar logos, initiates the planetary logoi. Then the flaming diamond, and then what's called the rod of the bodhisattva. It's used at initiation number 1 and number 2, and the Christ, the present Christ, is the wielder of that rod. These are amazing talismans of condensed energy, and they summon from far distant sources the energies that have to be conveyed. So, in other words, they're like magnets, and they pull in the energy needed, and then they also dispense the energy needed.
And it's very interesting when we are going to read about them, that how the energy is set forth first by the masters. They are repeating certain mantras, and that is going to stimulate a certain chakra of the logos. And then the energy goes to the sun, and from there it comes back. And the rod is used. And then the triangle around, there are supporters of to be initiated, and then the triangle around to be initiated is that which is going to take first the energy, and it circulates via them. So it is very dangerous process as well. That's why all of these placement of the masters and supporters are needed.
It's totally calibrated. It's totally scientific. You know, just like they say, Shambhala doesn't dare touch humanity except under the most excruciatingly exact type of contact, because otherwise this is a total science in the inner worlds, and you can see how beautiful it is. You know, Master Moria again says, he says, why do you insist on your methods when with your methods there is failure and with ours there is success?
and if
it doesn't leave you much room, you know.
And if we think about these powers, we can always think about plutonium or uranium, atomic power. That they are so huge powers that they will destroy us if we touch them. And that is even more powerful.
So you know, this is the science of it. It's always the crisis of initiation. You go through the burning ground, you have to get purified so that your vibration is like the door, and therefore you can pass through and so forth. It's always the same, only different centers are involved, a different body is involved, different atoms are involved that have to be musically raised to a certain pitch and a new rate of rhythm. It's a very exact and exacting science, you know. It's not a mystically approached factor. Of course, we can gain some things by mysticism. We can gain identification with things, very good, but behind it all, it's really regulated, and you will sense the fifth ray. See, the fifth ray tells you exactly what to do, when, and how much, and how often, you know. Otherwise, you have disaster. Okay.
In every initiation, there is some kind of destruction going on. So the rod is going to also destroy certain atoms, which are not needed anymore. So and what is interesting about that those atoms are changing radioactive, and that is telling about how they are going to be destroyed. And if you have ever studied the Shroud of Turin, what the modern science is expecting or thinking about what has happened inside the shroud is that man who was there came through or went through some kind of radioactive explosion. That's why the image has been implemented into the linen shroud. It's very interesting. I have made a few of these talks about that. It is enormously interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's not like resurrection is only for Jesus, but any initiate can rise in his body of light out of the physical form or convert the physical form into a body of light which will leave its impression. All of this is part of the science of the initiates. All of this lies ahead of us. All of us will be mastered by us to the degree we are sincere in our attempt to master. You know, the DK says, look, you become a master by mastering. So we're not going to give you everything. Here's another point. The ceremony of initiation marks a point of attainment. It does not bring about attainment, as is so often the misconception. It simply marks the recognition by the watching teachers of the race of a definite point in evolution reached by the pupil, and then gives two things, confirms those things. You know, like you're on a plateau and you could fall off it, you know, but once you're initiated, you can't fall off the plateau. There you are. You're confirmed in that position. An expansion of consciousness that admits the personality into the wisdom attained by the ego. That's one of the things that happens. And in the higher initiations, into the consciousness of the monad. So it's a consciousness factor. And two, a brief period of enlightenment wherein the initiate sees that portion of the path that lies ahead to be trodden. Now, I think in the ceremony you're going to do, you will imagine that kind of thing for yourself. What is that part of the path that lies ahead of you, so you can share your part in the great plan of evolution. After initiation, the work to be done consists largely in making that expansion of consciousness part of the equipment for the practical use of the personality at will, when you want it, you know, not just a high moment, no, when you will and as you will, and in mastering that portion of the path that has yet to be traversed. So it just seems like it goes on and on and on, trillions upon trillions, you know, who can use those numbers of how long it really takes to do this, and yet it's just, every universe is a flash compared to eternity. So, you know, time and space, we have to adjust our ideas about time and space. We think something lasts a long time. You could be asleep for a Google years, and it would be nothing compared to eternity. See, so you're in it for the long term. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay.
So, dear friends.
Now, dear friends, we are going to have a little break. About we start at 8 p.m. again. So I don't know what is the time now. 1:45. We are really punctual. Great. Thank you, Michael.
We're in good shape, and although I said to Tuya that this class is going until midnight, I didn't really mean it.
Only until 5 a.m. Right. Okay, 15 minutes break.